Happy Thursday, guys. Hope all is well. Looking forward to the call today. Glad to see Kyle Asman as my co-host today. We'll go around the room and just check in with everybody. Wow, what a week. It's been absolutely crazy busy. As you know, was at the Dealmaker getaway weekend in Orlando, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Really, really cool event. First time we've ever done that, where it was kind of very similar to the upper echelon mastermind, but we opened it up to some new people, and we had a whole lot of fun with some great speakers and some great people, some great deals, and lots of hot tub time and drinking and all the crazy stuff I get up to when I get to hang with you guys. So glad to be on the red light, green light call this week. I know I've missed it last few weeks with traveling and all those different things. Let's go to deal number 2. Let's go to Lars Bergstrom. The floor is yours, my friend. Off you go. So, Lars, just FYI, after my 4-mile walk to Starbucks and back this morning in the wind, I needed one of those bad boys. So if you buy this company, remember your Uncle Carl if he deteriorates in the future.
All right. So my name's Lars. I see if I can get this to go into presentation mode here.
There you go. Click the big purple button at the bottom. This is present. There we go.
Yep. So I'm looking at a non-emergent medical transport company. Both myself and Roberto. Roberto is with a patient right now, so he may or may not be able to chime in here. Combined, we got about 35 years of experience in the healthcare sector. I work as a paramedic for the Kansas City, Kansas Fire Department. And Roberto is experienced physical therapist in the home healthcare setting. The company here, it's established in 2013. The owner retired as a CPA back in 2013, started this company with one vehicle, so built it up to what it is now. Serve the upstate New York, transporting patients to and from doctor's appointments, emergency rooms. They got a big contract. They make a lot of revenue actually transporting people to methadone clinics as well. So it's the drug rehab stuff there. They also do some long distance stuff, transporting to every city in New York there. They have about 30 vehicles in their fleet, consisting of cabs, minivans, larger vans. They just recently bought 2 new wheelchair vehicles. Company's made up, they've got 24 drivers, have some office staff, have a dispatch center. They've got their own shop with a mechanic. The owner's 65 years old. He's ready to retire. He's kind of lost interest in the business. Says he's got a bunch of expensive racehorses up there in New York. He just kind of wants to retire, go play with his horses, doesn't want to have much to do with this anymore. He's pretty hands-off as it is now. Says he comes in he kind of does the hiring and firing. There's a girl in the office that does all the other day-to-day, and he said she's capable of doing hiring and firing as well. So she's who we've got pegged to be our GM. They've got in the deal, they have this Catalyst insurance. They said it's difficult to get insurance for the vehicles in this type of business, and they've got shares in this company, so that's part of the valuation of the business there. They just messaged us yesterday, said the new valuation just came in. It's increased by $55,000 for the shares they have in that. The owner's asking 1.5 for the business. He said he'd take the value of the shares off and sell it to us for that, or we could pay for the shares. So that was a consideration. Looking at growth, they said they've done very little marketing, have done no marketing since COVID started. They just recently hired a full-time marketing person. The wheelchair van portion of the company, they closed down during COVID. They just bought 2 new vans, and are opening that back up. Expanding to new territories. He said there's at least a couple counties near them that have no wheelchair van service, and he said he's kind of lost interest in the business, has no desire to do that, but that the office girl there, she's real eager to build upon that. The mechanic at the repair shop, he said he's not at capacity, so we have the ability to maybe open up a repair shop service as well, maybe as an ancillary business to that. So potential with some insurance companies that work with Medicare and some physician-owned organizations in the area to build more clients that way. The market analysis got a projected growth rate of around 9%. Due to aging population and more interest in preventative care. Any questions before I move on to the one sheet?
No. Let's see the numbers. Great presentation, by the way.
Thanks. Yes, I think the first time I've done a slideshow in more than 15 years now.
You're crushing it, dude. Keep going. But let me ask you a quick question while you're just figuring the sheet out. So is it 1.5 million including the 300K from Catalyst, or in addition to the 300K from Catalyst?
That's including that.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So if you let him keep those shares, right, which is what I would do, how does that affect the transfer of the insurance deal? Can you still have that insurance as part of the business, or do you have to own the shares to be able to qualify to have that insurance in place?
So you have to, I think we'd have to purchase shares in the company to be insured through them.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. The thing about that, though, it can act as security potentially. I'm just thinking if you did an SBA deal, whether you could use that 300K as your down payment or part of it. Yeah. Okay. All right. No worries. Yeah. Let's go through the numbers, and then I'll give you my thoughts.
All right. So yeah, we've got the adjusted EBITDA for the average is at 453. The 3 times multiple, so 1.36. We kind of, I think, including the shares with the offer we have made, we dropped it down to like about a 2.7 multiple plus the shares. We did an offer of 1.44.
Yeah.
And
yeah, it's lacking a bit of working capital, isn't it? You know,
yeah. So we
$22,000 in cash is a bit low for this type of deal. But yeah, there needs to be probably another couple of $100,000 of cash in this business. That's my only concern with this. What's the other fixed assets? The 28818 what is that?
I think that's probably the vehicles. That's their big assets is all the vehicles they have.
Right. Okay. Cool. All right. Hey, that's pretty good.
Yeah. So the said the AR is running at about 2 weeks. I think it is a broker deal. I think they're looking at cash free, debt free, but leaving about 125,000 of AR minus AP for the working capital is what they were wanting to do.
Yeah, which is way too low. Ordinarily, in a deal, to be super, super safe and give you lots of headroom, you typically want a couple of months of revenue in your working capital number. So, like for me, I'd want to see probably around $400,000 of working capital in this business, half of that being cash. So yeah, I think the beauty of an SBA deal, though, is if you can leverage the insurance asset as the equity in this deal, you might not be able to do that. You'd have to talk to David, right? But through an SBA 7A loan, it's highly likely. I think they would do this, right? Because it's, the revenues are going up, the margins are going up, the margins are, pretty reasonable, especially the adjusted EBITDA. 20% margins for a business like this, is pretty good. We've got an aging population. Presumably, a lot of the clients of this business, they're leveraging their insurance carrier, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, great. So it's not like it's an affordability, type of thing. Insurance companies paying really fast, though. Most of the medical deals I've looked at, they're not paying on average every 14 days. But on the whole, I like it. I think there's definitely a significant lack of working capital, and for that reason, I think the valuation is a little bit high. And then I think one of the challenges you've got is you've got a savvy seller, right? What do I mean by that? The owner's a CPA, right? He's not in the business day to day. He's not distressed. That's coming out massively in your mud score. He's gone and listed with a broker. He's not in the business that much. I think this guy will sit with this business on the market until he sells it. Having said that, this isn't an industry, to my knowledge, where there's a lot of trade buyers kind of sniffing around. I've not seen any like major roll-ups going on in this industry. I think this is one of those deals where it's more lifestyle related. Clearly, I think you could grow this. It looks like this is just a bit of place for him to put some money. The business has been around 10, 11 years. So on the whole, I like it. I just think it's a little bit overvalued based on the lack of working capital that the business has. But Jeremy, what do you think?
Yeah, I like these mobile healthcare related businesses. Other than the points that you made, my question would be, I'd want to dig into the add backs and take backs just because those are significant as compared to the overall adjusted EBITDA. So just making sure that those are actually legit, because they are adding some significant value to the business there. So I'd really want to dig into those. The other thing that I would want to question is, I assume that fixed asset value is probably a net asset value. So I think you said there's almost 20 vehicles in the business. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think there's 30.
There's 30. So that's probably the net amount. So you're probably going to be able to leverage some of those assets to back any loan that you have, because you're going to get the step up in value for those assets. Probably not a ton just because they're vehicle related, but they are vans. So they probably have a longer life, obviously, than a regular vehicle. But the SBA will look at that to help back the loan and have those as collateral. So that'll help you as well.
Cool. Let's go to Jamie Busby.
Mike, can you hear me?
Yeah. What do you think, Jamie?
Yeah, just echo everyone else's comments. What did I say? Yeah, Just a bit concerned about the EBITDA dropping down to 8%. I really want to get to know what that's all about. I like the industry. I think, it's definitely only going to grow, isn't it? Yeah, I think it's a good deal.
Cool. All right. Toby Bergstrom, what do you think?
The thing I want to ask the seller is how they budget for capex for replacing the vans, things like that, and just understanding, or at least project for yourself how you're going to do that, because although they do have a long life, they do, I'm sure, wear out.
Cool. Yeah, I'm working on getting a list of all the vehicles and the loan payments, and I think he's got some are leased and some are owned. But
Yeah, Lars, just speak. Can you speak to the 100% gross margins? Comment from Kelly in the in the chat. I missed that when I was skimming the numbers. Yeah, revenues and gross profits are the same. So I'm guessing it's because they don't really have a cost of sales, although you could argue maintenance, fuel, cost of the drivers in real GAAP accounting would be cost of sales. So business like this, you typically see about 70% gross margins, and then you'd have the normal overheads of the business. I think what these guys have done is just put all of the costs in the operating expenses. Jeremy, would you concur with that?
Yeah, I think that's probably what they're doing. So
yeah, they had zero for the cost of goods sold is what they had on the balance sheet.
Yeah, so it doesn't affect your EBITDA margins at all. It's just the way they're running their accounts. Normally, if the accounts would conform to US GAAP, that there is typically a true cost of goods sold, even for a services business. It still costs you money to provide the product or the service that's being delivered to the customer. But yeah, I just want to give Kelly the credit for kind of pulling that out. But okay, let's go to Lydia. Lydia's new to Protégé, got a great horizontal skill set. She's a corporate turnarounds professional, does a lot of work with private equity. Lydia, do you like this deal?
Personally, I would pass. I do. I think when you coming from the industry, it makes sense to go into something like this because you will understand your client base quite a bit, and you'll be able to see all the need in the industry. As far as I heard some comments about vehicles that are vans lasting longer than they should be per IRS. It is a depreciable asset up to 7 years. So there's really, this is kind of it. So, and depending how they depreciate those assets, given that this person is a CPA, they might have depreciated it with the with bonus depreciation method. And also to point out Carl's point that excuse me, that there are no cost of goods sold listed. It's kind of interesting to me because you can really see what it takes to run the business and how to improve the operations and basically see where your opportunities are to grow this business. Instead of just going and looking at the top line, you can also see how efficiently it's been run and improve on that as well.
Right. Thank you very much, Lydia. Thanks for answering the question. We'll go to some questions in a minute from the group, but let's wrap up. Let's go to Kyle. Kyle, anything to add on this?
No, I mean, like I said, I like the growth. The asset situation's a little bit concerning. I feel like it's got a good growth profile that's set up, though. I think the price is a little bit high, to be honest, at 1.5 million. I would probably push a little bit lower in the price. A lot of that being related to the assets, but I like the growth. I would probably be a low green light if you get the price down a little bit.
Yep, perfect. So you're pretty much where I am. Thanks for that. And then last bit of analysis. Let's go to Darren Yee. Darren, what do you think? Would you do
Yeah,
that?
I'm much where you guys are with the price point. Kind of might be on a higher side, but it's going to be hard to wiggle off of that price point for him because his mud score is not really there to say, hey, I'm going to bring it down, right? Because, he could just sit on this and he's making pretty good cash, on the side situation. So there's going to be some challenges in working through that working price, right? Like we think it slightly lower valuation, but doesn't have necessarily a ton of motivation outside. He just wants to retire, right? So
Yeah.
you might find it a little bit of a pain point. He could sit on this deal for another year and still make, plenty of money doing it. So, figure out kind of that cash on hand. But like many of other people on this, I'm a kind of a low green light on it. So.
Yeah, thanks, Darren. I think you
Yeah.
nailed it there. I think summing all the comments up, I think this is slightly overvalued. There is a big lack of working capital in the business. I think this type of business does have a pretty rapid cash conversion cycle. I'd love to know how he's getting paid much faster than what normally insurance companies would pay. But yeah, I think I don't see a trade buyer coming in and buying this, right? I see this as an individual, and as we know, no individual is going to rock up with $1.5 million in cold hard cash. They're going to go and get financing, right? So it's like real estate. The deal is subject to what the financing markets can bear, and I think the SBA are probably going to be at a lower valuation than what he's asking. So I think those are really good comments. Just want to answer a couple of questions in the chat, and then we'll go to Kay, Rodney, and Roberto. So Benjamin's got a good point. Could you keep the owner on with a small equity share, leave the shares with him, and keep the insurance? I think that's a decent shout. With all the new changes now with SBA, I think you can get so flexible now with the terms and the deal structures where you're potentially leaving sellers a little piece of retained equity. So I think that's a really good point. And then Ryan Ganesi, who's also from Austin, so he'll be another one of my neighbors. I missed him in the shout out at the beginning because he didn't have his camera on. So welcome to Ryan. He's a new protege. He was asking the question, how to determine how much working capital is required. So what we normally do, Ryan, at this stage, when we're kind of vetting and we're putting numbers together like this, we typically take about 2 months worth of revenue as the amount of working capital, with half of that being physical cash, right? So if you've got a business doing $2.4 million in revenues, we're taking 1 month as cash, which will be 200K, and then another 200K in other working capital. And working capital is AR plus cash plus inventory less any AP and any other liabilities that are payable within the next 12 months. So bank loans, tax payments, loan payments, all those different things. When you get into the
cinnamon vanilla
process,
iced coffee much?
when you get into the process with us, Ryan, when you go through the training and you learn how to use the model, and we've got coaching for you on all that stuff as well with our financing coaches, you'll see that the model calculates all that for you, and it adjusts the valuation and the deal structure accordingly based on what working capital's in the business. And typically you're in 3 camps, right? You find a business where the working capital is really where it should be, and think of working capital as fuel. In a car, you can buy a really expensive car, there's no fuel in it, or there's no charge in it. If it's an electric car, the car's not going to go, right? It's the same with the business. The business needs that working capital fuel to continue to trade and continue to do its operations. We saw on the first deal that business had a surplus of working capital. There was more working capital in that business than what the business actually needed. And in the structure on deal 1, we talked about how we could potentially use some of that as part of the funding mix. And then in this deal, it's the opposite way. There's not enough working capital in this business. This is like you're driving the car down the freeway and the red light's on, right? You need to refuel because in 10, 15, 20 miles, this car's going to run out of gas, right? So So all that stuff's got to be figured out as part of the deal structure. And the beauty of financing strategies like the SBA, the 7A loan program, is if they like the business, and I think they would like this at the right value, the lower value, they will give you additional financing to top that working capital up. So it's like you going and buying a car, you're financing the purchase of the car, and the financing company saying, yeah, Ryan, we really like this car, but you know what? You need a full tank of fuel to really enjoy it, right? So they'll give you the extra money to, to top that up so that it's working. So just wanted to answer that. And then let's go to the questions in the group. So let's start with Kay Stoner.
Great, thank you. I'll make this quick. First off, first question, where in New York State is it? Upstate New York is awfully big. Second, if there are no similar services like this in surrounding counties, that raises a red flag for me, because I was a consumer of these kinds of services for a while. And the fact that there are no other businesses in the neighboring counties, it kind of is, raises a flag, because there should be. I mean, there is a real need for this. So what happened to them? Did they go out of business? Were they not able to sustain? Like, what's the deal with that? And is the fate that befell them similar to what's maybe befall your company? Also, my business partner, Janine Little, her husband's family was in this business for many years, and she knows a ton about it. She's also texting me things to ask about. So just wanted to put them out there.
Yeah, so they're in the capital region of New York. They do say they have two competitors that are larger than them, but there's a lot of the competitors are mom and pop shops that kind of come and go. They said the two counties near them, I think they operate in 13 counties predominantly, but they've got two counties near them that have zero wheelchair van coverage. And I think there's been some interest. They've reached out wanting it, but he's like, I've got no interest in it. But the office girl wants to do it. That's going to be our GM.
Yeah.
Cool. Just real quick question from the chat from Dave Evans, my friend. I want to just answer it. So Dave was asking, what sort of healthcare businesses can you work with? If this was in the UK, then you'd look at the NHS. So one of the beauties of the UK is if you're old and poor, the country will take care of you, right? You don't have to pay for healthcare in England. In America, doesn't work like that, right? So nobody gets free healthcare, as far as I understand, unless you're retired military and you have that kind of coverage. So everybody has to have healthcare insurance. You've got Medicare, you've got Medicaid, you've got Obamacare, and then you've got obviously your own healthcare that you have to buy and pay for. So it's insurance companies, David, that will be paying for these services, and that's a great thing, right? If you looked at this for the NHS in England, the NHS is the only customer of this business, right? Or all the different NHS trusts all over the country. But then because it's free, and the NHS being under some pretty horrendous financial pressures, I don't think this would be such a great deal. But in the US, with the monster health insurance market, and with all the customers being able to use that insurance to pay for a lot of these services, this is why I think the margins are pretty decent. But let's wrap up with the questions, then we'll move on to deal 3. Let's go to Rodney Johnson.
Well, hey guys. So I actually looked at this deal last summer until last fall. The problem for me was the add backs. So when I looked through them, I pretty much didn't agree with any of them. It was stuff like car washes, car leases. He had his entire salary in there, his wife's salary, and the owner said he didn't work day to day in the business, but he still did some stuff. He kind of went in the office and worked on some stuff every once in a while. I'm not sure if I ever got an answer on what the wife actually did. But yeah, it was pretty much the add backs. I didn't really see any of them as like legit add backs. And for me, like without the add backs working or being legit to me, it just didn't really make so much of a sense. Every time I got an answer to a question, I ended up with like 10 more questions I needed to ask, and it just didn't make sense to me.
Okay, great. Well, I think definitely, Rodney, it'd be great for you to connect with Lars at some point offline and just share some of that insight with him. But yeah, I think Jeremy mentioned in his analysis, the add backs were pretty large You always need to vet the add backs. For broker deals, brokers typically put add backs in that aren't real. If his wife isn't working in the business, but is drawing a salary, which you do see a lot, that is a legitimate add back. If the guy's working in the business 10 hours a week doing a little bit of work, but is paying himself $100,000 a year, then some of that would be an add back. You've always got to look at what's the cost of replacing that stuff. Like if there's a GM in this business that can step up and do what the original owner was doing, then possibly it could be a full add back. But you need to vet that, and then Lars, you can take that to the bi-weekly financing call if you've got questions on that, or by all means chat with Sarkis or Danielle in a coaching call to go through some of that. But thank you, Rodney, for that insight. Let's wrap up with Ashley Pete, and then we'll move on to deal 3. Ashley, what's your question, buddy?
So I'm just wondering, is there any common good reasons why with businesses like this, when we see good EBITDA, but very, very low cash, is there any good reasons for that situation happening? Because like, I understand if, they'd spent money on assets, but then we'd see it on the balance sheet, or if they'd taken dividends, but then why would anyone take so much dividends to leave only 3 days of cash in the bank? It just seems to scream mismanagement in some way to me.
Some business owners are greedy, especially if they're preparing for a sale. Well, Rodney mentioned he looked at this deal 9-10 months ago. This business has been sat on the market for a while, which I think tells you a lot about the valuation, right? So there's probably a deal to be had. But yeah, like a lot of times, business owners treat their businesses like their own personal piggy bank. Clearly this guy, he's an owner investor for the most part. He's, I don't want to say rape and pillaging the business for cash, but he's obviously taking out as much as he possibly can. When I look at a business doing 2.5 million in revenues with only $22,000 of cash in the business, that's a big red flag for me. But as a CPA, he might have the most optimized financial management inside of his business, right? Like being a CPA is a great horizontal skill set as an owner investor. Maybe he's dialed in his financials to where he doesn't need this type of cash flow pumping through the business. Like we mentioned about the AR, normally, so this business is B2B because the customers are insurance companies, they're not individual patients, as we understand. So normally, health insurance companies, they pay on average around 90 days. So I would expect AR in a business like this, to be $600,000-$700,000. The fact that it's only 160 just needs some financial vetting. But I think on the balance of everything, I still think this is a good deal for the right price. Roberto, I see you back with your hand up as co-dealmaker on this. I'll let you wrap up on deal 2, and then we'll go to deal 3 with David Horry.
Yes. Sorry, guys. I was seeing patient in and out in the car. So yes, we're actually a little bit ahead with this, Carl. We spoke with Victoria, and so the owners really agreed for like the 1.4 range.
Now,
and
once you get out in the sun to get walking.
Sorry, I just muted Don Larson, who's getting out in the sun and walking. He's not in Florida because it's windy today. But yeah, sorry, Roberto, go ahead.
Yeah, so Victoria said, she allotted us for like a $275K working capital, and she said with this type of business, she already vet the financial, and she said there's more room to go up a little bit if we need to. And also with the cash injection from the seller, the seller agreed to carry a note for $140K. So we gonna, he agrees to do interest only for 2 years, and then we can pay, we can start principal and interest on the 3rd year.
Right.
So he agreed for like a 7-year term, and no payment penalty if we need to wrap him up for like after 4 or 5 years.
Perfect.
So that kind of cover us a little bit too.
Yeah, good. Well, it's good. It's good that you've already started having the conversations. Whenever you get a deal, guys, that is reasonably close, like this, absolutely, you got to be talking to financiers, right? Whether you go directly to the SBA, you go to the ever vested guys, or you go and talk to David, Mark Antonio, or his daughter, Victoria. But you didn't know that Victoria's his daughter, did you? But anyway, yeah, like chatting to those guys, you know, these guys are doing this every day. They're looking at deals, they're underwriting deals, and what they do is they have a panel of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different lenders under SBA. Some of them are banks, some of them are non-banks, and they're like a triage service. They obviously they kick away bad deals, but then depending on the type of deal and the type of structure, they'll go and they'll find the right home for that deal because they just have that pulse of the market for who's lending on what business types, what multiples, what coverage ratios, on all those different things. So yeah, I'm pleased that you're already in the financing conversations with this, and I think you can get it for the right price, and they'll give you the extra working capital. I definitely think this is a deal that you should pursue. So so great job, Lars. Great job on the presentation. First
Thank you.
one for you, and that, you know, as you said, the first presentation you've done in 15 years. So this is why we do it on this call. This is a safe space to not only get great feedback on the deal, but to give you that training, right? To give you that opportunity to test this, so that when you're pitching other people that won't be as friendly, sometimes you've got you've got those training wheels off, and you can go forward. So another great presentation, and yeah, kind of an average green light for me, but definitely worth pursuing.